Let us put into practice what we have learned so far. We are using Visual Studio 2019 Community Edition. Create a new project. Use console application template. Ensure that you are using C#. Click next. Give your project a meaningful name. In this case, I will call it guess generated number. And I'm going to change a solution name to just generate guess a number, guess number. I'm still saving into my C drive under Sesotho projects folder. Click next. We are still targeting .NET Core 3.1. Click create project. If you still remember, we did explain this code that is generated in our previous videos, and we also explained the difference between a solution, which is it will group different projects together. In this case, this is our project name and this is our solution name. Then it means we can put another project underneath here. They will be under one umbrella, which is a guess number folder. Yeah, let's continue. One thing that we need to do, let's create an instance of a class called random, and we'll give it a name random, this instance, and then we'll use keywords new to show that this is an instance of a class. Use semicolon to close it, and let's just say an instance is almost like a copy. We are copying a class because we are interested in one of its methods. So copy of a class, then we are going to save what we are going to use from that class. We are going to generate a random number between 1 and 100, and we are saving those values inside an integer value which is named guess. So let us use random. There's a method called next, then close. We'll generate a number from 1 till 100. The reason why we say 101 is because a minimum value is included when generating a number, but a maximum value is not included, it's excluded. Meaning that if you want to generate a number between 1 and 100, you need to say between 1 and 101. If you specify 100, you will be only generating a number between 1 and 99. So let us explain that using comments. So remember comments, we are writing comments for ourselves and the next developer. So this is we are typing for ourselves. So now when the code is running, it will ignore our comments and just do what we instruct it to do, except using our comments. Our comments is for us to understand the code, and for the next person, if he's working on our code, to also understand it. One thing that we want to do, we want to change the message that we are typing here. We are removing welcome, hello world, and remember we also explained that console.writeLine, it is just outputting a string value into our console screens. So let us just say welcome, and then guess a number. So let us explain this thing. We are just output to our console screen. We are outputting string to our console screen. Yes, one thing, let the game start. Let's use the same console dot write line. Here we want to tell our user exactly what we want him or her to be doing. We want them to enter a number between 1 and 100. So let us just print out let's say a whole number between 1 and 100. So the reason we are specifying a whole number, remember we are also generating integers. So we are not generating float, which is a number that has semicolon, a number that has a remainder. Yes. So we are not using a number that has a remainder. We don't want them to just type 1.1. Now that we have asked them to enter a number, we also need to store that number. Remember, we did strings. We are storing whatever their input into string. Input into string, and we are also using console dot read line. So we have just saved the user inputs. At this stage, a user can type anything that they want to type. They can either type a number or they can type just a string value. So in order to do that, we are going to use the if statement to convert. Inside if statement, we'll be converting the string into integer, and we'll be using int try parse. So let us just do our if statement and say int. We are interested in try parse. Then we pass our input, and then we out int value. So let us go to the body of our if statement. So what we have done so far, we are trying to press, which means converting a string to an integer value. We are using try parse. Try parse, what will do, it will try to convert whatever that you pass into it into an integer. If it is successful, it will return true. If it's not successful, it will return false. Now we are also outputting, which means we are referencing that value, which a value that is of type integer. So now that we have that value, in this case, if we have that value, this is a good time to also, check. We can also check if we were successful in doing that. But if we were not successful, we can also still just send out a message to the user, which is in this case using else. Then it means we're not successful there in converting that to integer. So if we are not successful, we just want to write to the user to tell them that we were not successful in changing whatever that they've passed into integer. So let us send them a message and say that you did not type a number. You did not type a number. So if we were not successful in doing this, we'll return this message. We did not type, you did not type a number. But if we are successful in doing that, then we have a new way. Remember, we said we are generating a number between 1 and 100. What if they click 0, or they click 102, or even 101? We also want to send them a message stating that, listen, we are only interested in numbers between 1 and 100. And by so doing, we are also going to use if statement again. If, because this is what we have just learned so far, we just learned this if statement. So let us use what we have just learned. If, remember, we have referenced this value. We say if this value is less than if this value is less than 1, using pipes, double pipes, we can also say or the value is greater than 100. We want to be pointing out, we want to be sending out a message here, which is console dot write line Then we could also tell them that the number have so we are telling them that the number they have inputted is not between 1 and 100. Then else, meaning that in this case we are saying that they have indeed put the number that we are looking for. So this is the time where we want to compare the number. This is the time where we want to compare the number that they have inputted, which means they have put in, and the number that we have just generated, a guess number. But before we do that, while we are still in else, let us just send out a message and we will build on this application. I think it's time to test our logic this far. So let's just return just the console. Let's just say your number is correct. Let's save and test this code this far. So, and just to test our logic, let us start from scratch. We have created a copy of a class. We have generated here a number between 1 and 100. We are storing it here. We are telling them this is the first thing that we write out, we output into our console. Then we output the second line where we said, please enter a whole number between 1 and 100. We store that number that they did typed in into our input, and we are using a console.readline to get the inputted value. Then we use if statement to check inside here, inside if statement, a value that we are actually checking against is that we are trying to praise, which means we are taking the string, we are trying to change it into an integer value, and we are referencing an integer value, which is an integer value in terms of if it is successful. We are referencing an integer value. In this case, it will be a value that we want to check, which is the value that they did put, and it is already converted into string, but it was already converted into an integer. And if that value is less than 1, which is our test case start here. If this number is less than 1 or greater than 100, this is the message that we want to send to them to say, oops, the number that you have entered is not between 1 and 100. But should they have entered anything that is not should they have entered anything that is not a number, it means we won't enter into this code, but rather we'll jump into this code. This is where we tell them that they did not type, or they did not, let's just say they did not enter. They did not enter a number. And if they did enter a correct number, which is between 1 and 100, we want to just send a message that this is correct, you have done a good thing. So let us test this. So this is our code, and this is the screen. It will start by saying welcome, guess a number, which is what we wanted them to say here. Please enter a whole number between 1 and 100. So let us first start by entering a number, let's say 102, or we could have just said 101. And if we enter, it is telling us back that the number you have entered is not between 1 and 100, which is what we wanted, which means we were able to enter here. Okay, let us test it again. Let us test another logic. In this case, we are going to enter not a number, but a string. We're going to just type 1. And then when we type that string, it says you did not enter a number, which is where we wanted it to go. Let us test a last scenario. This is where we get a number that is between 1 and 100. Let us write 55 and just click enter. It says your number is correct. So far our logic is working. I know this is not the best, but we are using what we have learned so far. Remember, we are just beginners and we are new to programming. Yes, so let's continue. And we are changing here. We will like to change this method here. So one thing that we want to do, we want to use something that we call patterns mapping to map and to check whether the number is the same as the one that we generated with this guess. So let us declare a string, call it a number value, and then since we are referencing a value and we are using, we'll type a word switch. So here we are taking whatever this value is, we are making sure that it is an integer value, we are representing it as v, and then we say here v, it's when v is less than guess number. Remember, guess number is the generated number, and we want to send a message because we are saving a message, which is this one here, as a string. So we wanted a string to just say that your number, to just say that the number that you have entered, it's just less than what we are guessing. Okay. So say your guess is less than generated number. Your guess is less than generated number. So here we are going to still use v when v, in this case, now the number is greater than guess. We are just going to output the number that your guess is greater, or should I use bigger than the generated number. And we also want a case where int v, when v is equals to guess. So this is what we want to return, that you win. So this is what we want to return if a guess number is the same. Why do I keep on forgetting to put e? And then we have a scenario. This is when we don't understand what happened or what we have just put in. So we need to just say something went wrong. So this is a case pattern. So let me explain it. We have a string. Then we want to store a result into that string. But we are passing this value. The value is what we have typed. Remember that what we have changed into integer, and making sure that it's an integer value, and also ensuring that it is a number between 1 and 100. If it is that number between that it's between 1 and 100, we are passing it into a switch pattern. Here we're making sure that what we are passing here, we are making sure that it is of type integer, and we are also saying here when a v, which is the value that you have passed, it is less than a guess. A guess is the number that we have just regenerated. This is what we want to store into this string. We want to say your guess is less than generated number. But in a case where it is higher, we want to say your guess is bigger than generated number. And this is the case. This is when you have actually spotted, or you are spot on, or you have guessed a correct number. We want to say, wow, you win, that you have win. But if something went wrong, somehow we find ourselves in this code, we are just going to type out, if it's not this, whatever that you have typed does not fall within these conditions, we want to say something went wrong. Okay, cool. In this case, now let us print out these messages, because we are using this string. Instead of writing that's correct here, we are going to remove everything and output what is inside there. So let us quickly output that. So we are outputting that value. So let us test this logic this far and see what will come out of that. So we have tested some few ones and we know that they are working. For this case, let us just click 6 and check. Then it says your guess is less than generated number, meaning that let us also show that generated number so that we can test when it's when your guess number is correct. So let us just use this and say, let's just add here and just say plus and then space and $sign and say the generated number is, in this case, so here what we are simply saying is that once we are doing that, we will tell you a generated number. But before that, I still just want to show it here before I can even come to this value here. Let me just print it out on top. This is for me to help me to test my logic to see when it's my number is the same as the generated number. Let us start by just typing. Okay, we see that it's number 14. We only checked when it's less than. Let's check when it's higher than. Let's just type 20. So it says your guess is bigger than, which is that it is correct by saying that. And we could also run it again, and we know that it's 37. Let's just type 37, and then it says you win. So this is what we have done so far. Next time I think we will try to write this code better, and also try to make it a loop so that every time once you have typed something, you don't have to really type it. And one thing that we also have learned in the previous in previous videos is that in order to make our code look good, we need to type console.read key. Okay, let me just explain a few things again. Let us explain it from the beginning so that you understand. Number one, we did create an instance of a class which is a copy of the class because we were interested in a one-off method inside this class random. So we used the keywords new. Then we created an integer to store our generated value. So this word random, it's this one because we are referencing it. This is a copy of that class. We are accessing a method from there. This method, what you use, it will give you an integer value between a minimum value and a maximum value. Minimum value included, a maximum value not included when generating a number. Hence we said 101 instead of 100. Now that we have this guess number, this one you can just remove it. This is what's for me to be able to test the code, if my logic is correct. Now, the first thing that we do, we are outputting into our console, welcome, guess a number. And then we are outputting the next, we are outputting to our console again a next message. Here we are requesting our user to enter a number between 1 and 100. After they have entered that number, we are saving that number using inside input as a string value inside input, and we are using console.readline to get the value. We then here used if statement. Inside if statement, our variables, we are just checking our variables that we are passing. We are just trying to change a string into integer. So we are using try press, and what it will return true if it was successful in changing this input into integer, or it will return false. In case when it return false, we want to come here and say, hey, you did not enter a number. But in case that it is successful, we are referencing a value, that value that was fully converted into integer. We are referencing that value and we are storing that value inside the word value, inside the variable value of type integer. Then we are checking here, we are using an if statement again. We are checking if this value, which is the number that we were successfully converted into integer, that is less than 1, which is 0, -1, and or by using double pipes, this value is greater than 100. And if that's the case, we want to tell our user that, hey, listen, the number that you have entered, it is not the one that we want. Okay, cool. Continuing forward, let's just say for some reason, which is a good conditions that we want, they have entered a correct number. We want that number to come here. We want to use this method inside here. So this is a switch pattern. In switch pattern, we have declared a variable called number value. Then we are using switch pattern. We are passing the value inside the switch. This value, we are making sure that is an integer value, and then we say integer value where, which is when this value that we have just passed here, if it is less than a generated value, which is we once generated, then we want to tell the user this message, which means we are storing this message inside this variable. And then the case here, if value is greater than the generated number, we want to store this message inside here. Otherwise, if it is the same as what we want to tell our user that they have won the game. But for some reason, if there's something that we were not expecting end up being in here, we want to also be able to tell the user that something went wrong, that's something that we're not expecting it to happen. Then we take the string, whatever that was a result of this switch statement, we are now passing it into our console output. Here we can just say the same thing. We are outputting so we are outputting to our console. What we are outputting is the results that we get from there, and also we tell them, because they won't be able to see the number, especially when they get the number was less or so forth. We want them to see the number that was generated. So that's how it is. Let us test it once more again and say goodbye to this. So this is what we wanted to create. It says welcome, guess a number, please enter a whole number between 1 and 100. Let me just say 44 because I don't see it right now. It says your guess is less than a generated number. Then the generated number is 59, and then we can make a comma here. I left a comma here. That's how it is. So thank you guys for watching. We'll continue building on top of this. We'll introduce more ways, and we'll introduce cleaner ways as we continue. We'll create some other applications.